Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house tonight. Welcome, Mac
Was good.
and Gio.
What's good, guys?
We are back covering the action from this weekend's Premier League, and we'll also look ahead to some of the games taking place midweek in the Champions League. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's go straight into the first game, Mac, and that one was that we're going to discuss at the very least. Aston Villa 1, Arsenal 0. Aston Villa, of course, off the back of that impressive result against Man City, beating the champions, and now, of course, beating Arsenal, who were league leaders heading into the weekend. A very impressive win, but what were your overall takes in this game, Mac?
If I'm going to go hot take first, I would say never complain about the referees because if you do, they'll come back and bite you in the ass, and they're just haters. It is what it is. You just compliment them even when you get something wrong, and eventually, then you might get a little bit deuced. But if you complain, they'll bite you in your butt. Like I said, I think overall this game. With that being said, this game there wasn't too much disparity between these two teams. I think Arsenal, if you would be on average, if they play this game 10 times over, they probably win 6 of them. Villa wins 3, maybe get a tie. You know what I mean? It's much closer, I feel like, in terms of the scoreline, but Arsenal edged it out. I think they weren't clinical in their moments. Odegaard, especially Gabriel Jesus, Saka had his moments. You had a couple of key Arsenal players in the final third with goal-scoring opportunities and weren't able to finish. And I would argue Emi Martinez didn't have to make one, I'll say, amazing save per se. There were good opportunities that either missed the net or were poor shots. And one that comes to mind, of course, is the Odegaard when he's able to continue. He cuts left, I think, is like 2 or 3 times in the first half. Emi Martinez is able to dive down and reads him perfectly. Wasn't too difficult to save. And Odegaard should stick that away in all likelihood. So I think overall that is the key takeaway in terms of breaking down a couple different situations. If we have some reviews, this brings up, I guess, a similar theme for Arsenal, if we were to start with them first, is where in January, do they need a striker? Gabriel Jesus, I think, only has 1 goal in his last 10 games in the Premier League for Arsenal. Not the greatest return, and you both know how I feel about Eddie Nketiah. Not the greatest backup even himself. So I think that this is starting to now further entice or further put pressure on those questions because everything else for Arsenal seems to be working well, except for in the final third, at least as of right now. But you do have to give credit to Villa. And want to be able to make sure that you give John McGinn his dues, his credit. Phenomenal goal, great celebration. And I think this is a little bit of a different display from Villa, what we've seen differently, especially against Man City, where you felt like they were controlling the game a lot. I felt like they had to ride their luck a little bit more against Arsenal with some key moments, with really only having that one opportunity to score. But again, a win's a win. They were unfortunate, and maybe we'll talk about some of the decisions. But right now, as Unai Emery said after the game, they're in the title race now. So this should bring a lot of fun for those villains.
Oh yeah, for sure. Of course, we have to go to Aston Villa, and that goal by John McGinn finished off after a great move early on into the game. Gio, what is it about Aston Villa this year that is making them, of course, now part of the top 4 and even potentially contenders for the title? What do you think, Gio?
I think it's just the balance of it all. They're equally focused on the defensive end, which I think does help for them not conceding because we've seen Steven Gerrard kind of field a similar side, albeit, 1 or 2 differences. And maybe properly utilize certain players, albeit Douglas Luiz, who we all know is having a great season or a great run of form right now. Yeah, I think it's just the manager and the manager's style that's able to allow these guys to flourish. Obviously, Stevie G being a fantastic player, does that necessarily make him a fantastic manager? That's always up for debate. Probably not, but yeah, I think it's the manager. He's found a rhythm with certain guys, and he's able to unlock some of these guys who may have not had the greatest run with the last 2 managers, and kind of put some belief into them. So again, I've stressed this over and over again throughout many of our podcasts that confidence is a dangerous drug for footballers or athletes across the board. So yeah, now they're playing defensive, they're conceding less, and then now they're going forward as a unit and then scoring more. Again, we don't know how long this lasts because how often are you going to expect a goal from Jamie McGinn or lean on a player like Jamie McGinn to be your game-winning goal scorer? They're going to have to look for other ways to score as well. Apart from Mac's favorite Scotsman.
Yeah, of course, John McGinn, impressive there. Ollie Watkins has been decent this season. Leon Bailey, who created, I think, the goal, has been playing quite well as well. And then, of course, Moussa Diaby, with his pace in the second half, just causing all sorts of havoc, is a great threat to have for Aston Villa. And then on the defensive end, like you said, Gio, very, very well disciplined, because if I saw it correctly, they of course play that very, very high line, have caught the opposition the most times offside this season, if I saw that right, over the weekend. So very, very impressive from them. Really interested to see how they do in the next coming periods, heading into the quote unquote busier season, and of course them having European competitions to deal with as well. So I don't know. They do look like they are in a good spot. They do have some depth, but we're gonna have to see. I wouldn't personally label them as contenders. Very much like Spurs, they have a great run. They have a great platform, but you really have to see how the next period goes before you can really make that judgment call. What do you think about that, Mac? About the Aston Villa run of form so far?
I think in terms of how things have all come together for them, I think that since the beginning of last year, if you look at the total points table, I think since Unai Emery took over the club, they're in the top 3 in terms of what they would have accumulated in points since then. So they're on a great run of form. I think it'll be very interesting to see, because they made a tweak going into the beginning of the season of how to be able to make sure that they're transitioning the ball, and when other teams are applying pressure, what they can kind of do about it, and when they apply pressure and how they're trying to utilize their high line. So they've had small tweaks. So I am skeptical in terms of, my opinion, their defensive talent. At the end of the day, that high line, I think eventually, and you saw as the game got deeper into it, Arsenal started to slowly be able to figure it out. They were caught out a couple times, specifically with Bukayo Saka and Martinelli at different times. I think that piece of the puzzle, if that gets figured out, do they have kind of another gear to go to? They have a change that they can make. I think that I'm a little skeptical on that part. I think Unai Emery is a good enough manager to figure something out, at least to make it somewhat work. But to be in the position on the table, I think is well above and beyond what they could have dreamt of and hoped for. But you have to give them credit for that. I think at the end of the day, if they finish within the top 5, this is one of their best seasons since maybe in the last 10, 15 years in all likelihood, right? So I think that they should be very happy. They should have to keep level. They should have to understand that they were very fortunate, I would argue, within these last couple of games to come out with the results they did. They deserved it, considering how hard they worked, the tactic game they put in, as well as the talent of the players that they have. But this run of form, I don't think we're going to see a situation where Aston Villa are going to be in the final kind of dregs of the title race. They're not going to be there. They're going to be fighting with in all likelihood, the Spurs, the Man Uniteds, the Newcastles for that 4, 5, 6 spot in all likelihood. And that's where they should comfortably sit. And as they can kind of accumulate points now, they're going to be in a better position. I think to kind of highlight that, even though they're at home against this Arsenal team and they've kind of generally played better at home than away, they kind of still lost in terms of expected goals. So their clear-cut opportunities were few far between. And if Ollie Watkins goes down for an injury, if you see Leon Bailey go down for an injury for any time period, they definitely don't have, in my opinion, the kind of the tools in the cupboard to be able to kind of deal with that situation. So again, it's a long season. They're in a great run of form. They come up and face, I think it's Brentford next, so that will be a very tough opposition, and I think it'll be interesting in terms of the different of state play styles versus the last 2 games against Arsenal and Man City. Not too much different between the two, so they had the game plan just carried over to the next game, right? It's not too much difference. There's different names on the back of the shirt you got to worry about, right? So again, I think that'll be fun. Still a very good team. Have to give them the credit, and I'll be very interested to see how they managed to hold on to. I know this is kind of talking into the future, maybe a little bit too much for them as a team. How are they going to kind of hold on to some of their players? Because there were already links over the course of last January for Douglas Luiz to go to Arsenal. A lot of players are going to be potentially picked off from this team. As what happens when some of these kind of, I'll say, middle of the road Premier League teams kind of take that jump up. The most recently we was talk about Leicester City, where they got pillaged over the course of a couple of years, right? I would argue two of the three best players, Conte and Mara, is done and dusted, and you saw the team come back down to normal. Obviously, Villa, I would say, are a club of more pedigree than Leicester, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw links of not just Douglas Luiz, maybe an Ollie Watkins. If you see a Leon Bailey maybe to make a quick switch shift again, I would not be surprised if those players move on quite quickly, considering how well they've done for Villa already. But again, enjoy while it lasts.
Yeah, of course, one of those players being Yuri Tillemans, who is now featuring more often for Aston Villa, who just recently joined from Leicester as well on a free transfer. So, yeah, very very interested to see how they do. Again, I do agree. It's kind of, we'll see how it goes for them. On the flip side, though, I guess asking Gio's opinion, because Mac, you did talk about Arsenal a little bit. Did anything really go wrong for them in this game, or was it just, Odegaard had a couple chances that were that he could have put away, he didn't. Martinez, that save was big was big for Aston Villa in the first half. And yeah, Villa just looks, with Unai Emery, just looks more gritty and determined to get that win. I guess compared to other teams. What are your thoughts there, Gio?
To be quite fair, I think nothing really did go super wrong. Yes, the transitional defense leading to Jamin McGinn's goal was, obviously probably the biggest down point. But to be fair, they had opportunities, on for any pro or any athletes. You're gonna have your off nights, and I think they simply just had an off night. They can't dwell too much on this loss. Yes, you're facing a very hot Aston Villa team, but is it anything to hit the panic button for? Absolutely not. You're sitting, I think, second now. But
Yep.
again, if I have to add something to this, like I said last podcast with Mac, I said that the team they should be actually worried about is Liverpool, who's flying under the radar and scraping up all these points without having, the media kind of hound them like they are hounding other teams. So, apart from Man City, I think, Liverpool is this team to be worried about. Not so much Villa. Again, one injury, and this team can do a complete 180 on us. We don't know yet. They're fortunate enough to not have too many big injuries. But as of right now, season drags on. Playing in the cold, anything can happen. Obviously, God willing, nothing happens. But it's a long season for them. They haven't been this high on the table in quite some time. So there's definitely nerves going into every game.
I
Yeah,
want to be able to
it
jump into the Geo. Sorry, my apologies. To be able to jump in on that point, because I do think that it's not necessarily a panic button, but there is a trend with Arsenal in these types of games where they're not clinical enough. This is I think very much of a norm. The comparison would be most recently when they faced Newcastle. It was a very tough, gritty game. They were kind of missing that difference maker, I would say, up at the top of the pitch. And you've seen other teams where, in terms of like expected goals, which you're going to be able to get from this team, they're not necessarily outperforming it as you would generally receive if you have kind of the big name striker. Who that is in the market, I don't know, but I think that is something I would be surprised if it's not at least somewhat attempted to be addressed. It's addressed well, who knows? But I think that's a big difference. And I think that's something they have to figure out, because I would argue in terms of, let's say a back six for Arsenal, or even like a back five, let's say just Declan Rice in the back four, that's as good as you're going to get in the Premier League in all likelihood. It's how can they fix the players up top or adjust the players up top accordingly. So in these games, when they're as tight as they are, that they have that difference maker. Because if you look at a team like Liverpool, they have Mohamed Salah, they can count almost a goal a game from him. Man City, they have Erling Haaland. You can count a goal against for them. But I would argue you don't have that for Arsenal. Saka's a phenomenal player, but he's not that player. And I don't think that's maybe his best quality too. It's everything that he does for the team. They need, do they need that type of player? I don't know. It's still early in the season. But I think that's their difference of, as we kind of see where Liverpool can kind of outscore teams, Arsenal really have to out-defend teams. And if they want to be what we've seen like last year from Man City, they could do both. And I think that's the differentiation right now. So it's not a panic button, but I'm definitely like looking at the button and thinking about it.
It should go. It shouldn't go unsaid as well. Arsenal looked like they pulled it back at the very end through Kai Havertz, maybe one of those options as the clinical striker moving forward. Maybe he has been quite playing quite well in the last couple of games. Of course, I think it was called a handball on him after that sort of scramble in the box with Matty. We've gone on for too long, so I'm gonna have to push it to another game, Mac. But I know that you have some thoughts about that we can discuss later on. But yeah, ultimately, unfortunately for Arsenal, they weren't able to get the tie, and eventually got the loss. But let's move on to another game that took place. Everton 2, Chelsea 0. Gio, more of the same from Chelsea. Really, a lot of chances you could say, but not able to convert. And again, defensively at the back, they lose their heads in a couple moments, don't defend well, and then concede. What were your thoughts from that game?
They are bad. Just the way that everybody is looking to score but can't score, and then everybody is hoping to defend but actually doesn't defend is absolutely shocking to me. What the amount of money Todd Bowley has put into this team, but still can't get anything out of these guys is almost criminal. The players are the criminals at this point. Send them all to jail. Send them all to jail because they are not doing their jobs. Both goals. A lot of standing around. As we are all footballers in a degree to a degree. I think we all saw it. Calvert-Lewin obviously gets a shot, the rebound. A lot of standing around. No kind of urgency to even try to close out on that or slide or anything of that nature. Which puts Everton up 1-0. Then leading into the second goal, off the corner, Garner corner heads it out to Dobbins. Again, everybody's in the box, maybe except for I believe Cole Palmer, who was standing right outside the box. Everybody inside the box. Dobbins, miles of free space. No one decides to close out. Free shot. Dobbins scores. I mean, like it's almost elementary where you have to close out. It's common sense as a defender. Even if you're not a defender, you want to close out. You want to get something on the shot, maybe to give your team a shot, to give your keeper a shot, maybe. But they didn't do any of that. They stood around. Cleats were glued to the grass. All of that. It was just poor.
Yeah, really can't add much more to it. Even though very early on, both keepers played quite well and had some saves. It comes down to like those moments, like you said, especially even just the partnership of Dizazi and Barishile in that center back partnership for Chelsea. Yeah, I understand that they're looking for the future. Barishile just looked it up. 22, Dizazi is 25. They could be good in the future, but right now it's just not good enough. And if you have to rely on Thiago Silva, who is pushing 40, if not already 40, it's not looking great for you to rely on him moving forward. But even then, going forward, they don't have what it takes to score. It looks like for Broja, I do feel bad for him. He just come back from a long injury, and hopefully he's able to hit the ground running and battle for that position with Nicholas Jackson and Nkunku. But in a team like Chelsea, where they spend so much money, there's not much. I don't think he's going to be given enough time to sort of settle and given that opportunity. So not looking great for them overall. On the Everton side, though, great win. Even at home with these with sort of what's been going on with the club, Sean Dyche able to pull it out of the mud and get back-to-back wins. So very, very impressive. What were your thoughts there, Mac, from this game?
To start positive, Everton, absolute class. If you take a look at it right now, if they didn't get the points deduction, they would be at 23 points, which would put them actually above Chelsea on the table and just outside of the top 10. So again, so far, I feel like you have to be able to give Sean Dyche and his boys great credit in terms of the way they deal. And I feel like it's important, and maybe the differentiation between this and some of the other teams, or even they'll talk about today as well as Chelsea. They have a game plan. They have a mentality. They have kind of an idea. You know what you're going to get out of them. You know their approach. I think my favorite part, if from an Everton standpoint of the game, is after the game when Sean Dyche was talking about this, the celebration from Dibble, I think it is, where he's talking about, we got to remember who we are and not kind of celebrate too much. And he was kind of distressing the fact that the kid was very, very happy scoring his first Premier League goal. But at the same time, it's like, hey, chill. Like, act like you've been there before, which is perfect attitude. I love it. It just, as the old bones in my body, just makes me very happy to see someone talk like that. Just calm down. But in terms of what they got out of this game, I think the difference will be I have no fears for them kind of finishing in the relegation spot. I'm not worried about that at all. But I think the separator for them is, can Dominic Calvert-Lewin kind of find a reign of form? He played well, just couldn't get that finish. And I think that is going to be their separator, is that if Beto, who's come on and he's played well in certain moments, or Dominic Calvert-Lewin can get in some reign of form, you'll see them start climbing up the table even faster than they've gone on the previous run. And I think the points deduction can even further kind of galvanize that, where it's kind of an all-for-one type of mentality. So even though it hasn't worked well for him, he's still going to kind of give you that work, give you that effort. It's not dissimilar to what a lot of kind of NBA analysts used to view with like centers. You give them like the first touch in every half, let them do their post-up move. So the rest of the half, they'll rebound, block, and kind of do what they need to do for you, right? The same thing with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. If you can get that goal, it'll make everything else, or his energy levels will go up. So I would love to see that for him. I want to give credit to Dwight McNeil. Love to see him kind of doing what he needs to do. Again, back-to-back games, playing very well, kind of finding his own. Felt like at Burnley, he never really found himself. Maybe in this Everton shirt, playing under, again, Sean Dyche, he's able to do so. But now, to what we're really here to talk about the game. For Chelsea, absolute piss poor. I have a fun stat for you boys. So do you know how many points Chelsea has in the Premier League table as of right now? As they say, 12. 19. Okay. And you would think the team under Pochettino, the team how they play, they would be very good in possession. And I feel like that's their weakness. Because if you take a look at the 6 games that they had fewer than 50% possession, they've got 11 points. So they have a majority of their points from games when they didn't have the ball. And that's something we noted on a couple weeks ago when I think it was going into the Manchester United game, in fact, where, hey, this team plays to the level of their competition. No, when they don't have the ball, there's fewer mistakes or fuck-ups they can make. That seems to be the trend here. And I think, again, I don't think that's the long-term plan for Pochettino. I don't think that's the quote-unquote Chelsea way per se. But it is a constant theme here where they struggle in possession. They struggle creating opportunities. They, in fact, play better when the other team has the ball. They come onto them, and then they're able to kind of utilize their pace, which they have abundance of. Nicholas Jackson is fast, not clinical. He needs a lot of opportunities to score. If you're talking a player like Sterling or Mudryk, again, pacey, not very clinical. So they need quite a few more opportunities and space to get in behind to create those better opportunities. If you ask them to break them down and kind of build out possession, it doesn't seem like they have it, as well as they don't have, I'll say, a threatful striker where if they do have this possession and let's say they're dumping balls into the box, there is no threat. I'm not scared of anyone doing anything. And the worst part for me, if I'm a Chelsea fan, is you're talking about, and Ray, you highlighted them, Dizazi and Badiashile. You're talking about Chelsea, who've spent almost £1 billion on a defense, like a whole team. You have young defensive stars that you're looking at. The best young defender on the pitch was Jared Braithwaite for Everton. Absolutely phenomenal. Wouldn't be surprised if he's on Chelsea's radar, because again, Pochettino right after the game was talking about, hey, we're not scoring enough goals. We need a striker. Who knows how many more players they're going to bring in, and they've already spent £1 billion. So Chelsea suck, and it is what it is.
Yeah, very lastly, of course, it was Robert Sanchez who had to go off injured in this game, but also Reece James had to go off through injury as well. So not a great look overall, because you'd expect, more games and more time spent. These guys are able to get to know each other, play along with each other, and hopefully put in a good performance and build on a good platform. But if they're injured here and there, it's not looking great. So yeah, we'll see what happens in the coming weeks, and then we'll keep an eye out for that. But let's take a quick break here, guys, and then we'll be back with more Premier League football to talk about, so stay with us. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue today's podcast now discussing another impressive win by Spurs. They beat Newcastle 4-1 in this past weekend. And yeah, this was essentially how other people call it, the matchup of injuries. The two teams riddled with injuries coming into this game. And I gotta hand it to Spurs. They look good. They look like they're how they started the season. Really impressive, really bright on the front foot, scoring first again in this game. I think if I heard it correctly, their sixth game in a row where they scored first in the game. And so if you do that, it's gonna be a great platform for you to grow into. So Mac, what were your overall takes on this game?
This was a team, it feels like, with two different complete energy levels, and I think this is somewhat the benefit of the fixture list, and you look and be about how many games these two teams played in comparison to each other. Newcastle played so many more games. This is the same starting like outfield 10, I think, like 4 games in a row now, and you could kind of see it in their effort with the intensity that Tottenham bring it, where Newcastle just couldn't keep up, couldn't keep pace, and we're taking that 1 to 2 extra touches when before, if they have their energy levels, if they have kind of the pace that they normally would have done, you can kind of see them moving the ball quickly. Whereas if now in this game against Spurs, they were nipping at the heels, and it was very, very difficult for Newcastle to kind of even get out of their own half. And you see players in back-to-back games like Kieran Trippier making mistakes, and that's not known through his kind of so far his career with Newcastle. So I think it is a differentiation between the energy levels of two teams. To give credit to the Spurs, I think that again, they needed this win more, I think, desperately, considering how the recent run of form has gone for them, where I feel like everyone still has them in their good graces because of the way they play, but they needed some more points to kind of get back a little bit of momentum. And scoring 4 goals against a Newcastle team is a great solvent for that. James Maddison's still going to be out for the rest of the year, but I feel like in the interim, until Maddison's back, this front 4 makes a lot of sense for Spurs. When you're talking about Kulusevski playing in behind a Richarlison striker, because that's kind of the area of the pitch I feel like they've been missing, where that creative midfielder to be able to kind of help link play with the defensive midfielders and still kind of jump into attacks. And Kulusevski against certain teams has the chops to be able to do so and not just kind of stick him out wide. So I think that right now, Ange has kind of moved the jigsaw pieces around and kind of found something that fit that I think is very pleasing in terms of what he wants to be able to do going forward, as well as defensively around them in terms of what they're able to apply pressure, how Udogie, Pedro Porro are able to get into the mix as well. I think that this is just the right mix until they slowly start to get their players back. And the fixture list for them, even though it's not the easiest right now, I felt like they got past kind of a rough patch. They now go to face Nottingham Forest, which you would think should be a fairly easy win for Spurs, considering how well they can play offensively. So again, it seems like they've turned the corner and they can hopefully get back to momentum along with injuries. But great display from Spurs.
Yeah, of course. Gotta give a big shout out to, of course, I think it was Destiny Udogie who got the first goal. Just came out today. He also, as well, he got a new contract extension with a increased salary. So great props to him. He was great in that first goal and been playing quite well throughout the season. So him, of course, you had Son creating the first 2 goals as well, and of course getting himself getting on the score sheet on the last goal through the penalty kick, even setting up the likes of a man like Richarlison. So if you have Richarlison scoring on your team, that pretty much wraps it up. But Gio, yeah, what were your takes from this game? Were Spurs that impressive, or were Newcastle just poor? What were your thoughts?
Twice. So extra poor. No, I thought obviously, yeah, I thought Spurs played great. But it's not anything we haven't seen from them this season. They have put it to teams, and we know how they love to cross the ball. Obviously Johnson and then Pedro Porro. Those crosses are going to come in. Kulusevski, those balls are really going to come into the box. I just thought the defending was very poor. Kieran Trippier was, as Shaquille O'Neal would love to call it, barbecue chicken. He was getting cooked. He was getting cooked. Let's just call it what it is. He got cooked. Obviously, doesn't happen much in his career. Obviously the mistakes from last week, are kind of overcompensating themselves now. And yeah, no, I think he's in his head a little, but you hope a player of obviously his talent and his tenure will brush it off soon, because as a leader on the field, you really need him to be focused. But yeah, no, I thought the defense was poor from Newcastle. A lot of ball watching, a lot of, oh, I thought you had him, especially on the first goal on Udogi. Um, I forgot who he walked in front of, but he walked behind two players, and there was a defender who was there were two defenders covering one player, and the defender was literally looking right at him, and just watching the goal happen. And he puts his face in his hands, as if someone else could have done something, when very evidently he should have stepped up, because the ball was coming to a player closer to you. So just very poor. I think obviously they're feeling the pinch a little, now. Again, coming off a loss from Everton, you don't like losing to a team that low on the table, whether they deserve it or not. Nobody loves to see that, especially when you see, say, like a 17 or an 18 beat wherever you're at. It's never a good look. But yeah, I think the schedule doesn't get any better for Newcastle. Like we all know, they do have a Champions League matchup coming up. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's
Yeah,
gonna be tough days.
let's get straight into it. Of course, they are hosting AC Milan on Wednesday. They need a win, of course, and also hope that PSG don't get a result at Dortmund. Dortmund, of course, already qualified, so they I think they'll be looking to still get a win so that they can confirm that first place finish. But of course, Newcastle, they likely will be facing that same, will likely be fielding that same team, Mac. Not a lot of wiggle room there for a lot of substitutions. Of course, they'll be at home though. So in a must-win game with the crowd behind them, you do back them to get the win. But what are your expectations there? Is there any concerns if Newcastle don't make it past this um, first group stage back in the Champions League? What are your thoughts, Mac?
Absolutely not. No, I wouldn't be worried if they don't make it past the group stage. I think that, again, I would expect them to get the win against Milan, but the other side of the coin with PSG, I would be surprised if they don't pick up a result at Dortmund, considering the rotation Dortmund plays, as well as kind of, I would say that matchup for PSG can be very favorable because Dortmund like to be high flying. They like to be able to be aggressive. They like to be able to get up the pitch, and that leaves space for PSG's kind of attackers, in space and behind. And I would be a little bit worried again, like I said, about PSG not picking up results. So I think Newcastle, in all likelihood, probably don't qualify. They do, and full credit to them. But I think for them, what they need to set is a standard of expectancy. So even if they do get knocked out, it frees up the schedule for them a little bit where they need to be a consistent threat, I would say, in the top four. That allows them to continue to spend more money because if they're consistently going into the Champions League, their financial books are going to look stronger and stronger. We've always talked and we've always joked, oh yeah, where is Neymar going to go? He's going to go to Newcastle. Who's the most expensive signing going to go? Go to Newcastle. By doing things like this, by continuously qualifying for Champions League and making it deeper and deeper into competitions, it allows that influx of cash coming in to be able to be utilized on players like this. So again, I think that's the next step to set up that consistency to be able to make sure that they finish as high in the table as possible, if in all likelihood in a European spot, so they can continue to be able to invest in the squad. Because I think that's the separator right now. I would argue you have one of the better starting 11s, if not one of the best starting 11s in the Premier League, easily within the top 4 or 5. Should always be rivaling there. You have a quality manager. Maybe one day it might be replaced if they're looking for that step up if things don't work well, but who knows? Still early days. But I think the main difference now is when you start to get knocked down by 4 or 5 players, who you got? Who's the next up? And I think that's their differentiator. There's a difference when, let's say, as a team, I don't mean to compare and contrast, is when you have, let's say, a Cody Gakpo or you have a player like Trossard coming off the bench in comparison for a team like Newcastle, and you're relying on Matt Ritchie. No disrespect, but there's levels to this, and unfortunately, Newcastle, they're not there yet.
Yes, of course. That being said, Joe, same question. If let's say they don't qualify um, for the next knockout stages in the Champions League, do they look to improve their team significantly in the winter season through permanent signings, or do you think they might look into a different sort of approach that you listed up for us here? Maybe get some of those help from the Saudi League and get some loan signings just to push them over the edge to get to that top 4 position and then regroup at the end of the season. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Oh, you bet your ass they will be looking to Saudi Arabia because, why the hell not? Obviously, there's a plethora of options there, to do so. And I think it was a mistake for the Premier League not to ban these transactions. They will happen. They will inevitably happen. Teams will look for any way to gain that edge against these big clubs, and with the ambitions that Newcastle have, I can't see why they wouldn't. It's easier on their books. It's easier on whatever team they are partnered with. Al something. I don't mean to be, rude or anything. I just don't know the team names that they're associated with. But yeah, no, it's the simple thing to do. They are not. They don't need to look any further because they have a plethora of option. Um, whether the injuries take longer or whatever, they're gonna have these players to use, and why spend that extra money for talent when talent is, you know, just a plain just a plain right away. It'd
Yeah,
be
that's
silly
definitely
for
gonna
them not
be.
to. It'd be silly for them not
It'd
to.
be silly if Ruben Neves is not playing for this team January 1st.
In January, absolutely, absolutely.
Ruben Neves is, I think
and
that's the first
and
thing that they should address.
yeah, and best believe that if Neymar wasn't injured, somehow Neymar again, not
Oh
through
no,
a initial
Anthony
signing,
Gordon's better. Anthony Gordon's better. At me
Neymar would
right
be
now.
there as well, and Neymar
Um,
would be in the Prem like everybody else kind of wanted.
yeah, we finally get our happy ending. But of course, hey, even the likes of Mitrovic, who, if Newcastle keep having those injury troubles for Alex Isak and Callum Wilson, who's to say he won't come back to Newcastle and feature for them a little bit. But anyways, let's move on to the last game we're gonna cover from this weekend. Gio, unfortunately, we do have to go back to this. Man United 0, Bournemouth 3. So, Mac, we're going to just mute our microphones for a little bit and let Gio give us his thoughts on this game.
Boy, if you thought Chelsea's defense was bad, it was. Look, first goal. Why do you need to make a pass like that to try to chip it over? Wh- who are you? Who are we to be cheeky? Hey, you don't have the facilities for that. Please don't try that again. Second goal. I can't knock Luke Shaw for being small because he played well the last game at center back. And again, I didn't have a problem with him be playing center back here again, just because I believe in his ball playing ability. But he simply got outsized. What are you gonna do? This guy is towering. He's towering over you, and that's just the fact of the matter. It's natural ability. So I can't really argue that. And then the last goal, it is what it is. Fourth goal should have counted actually. Should have very much so counted. I think Mac has a more passionate answer, but yeah, it was a poor performance. From the very beginning, they had pockets of decent play, but decent play isn't going to get you points. You have to play better, and it's just frustrating knowing how they can get points off a Chelsea or have such a good performance and in a week span, not even a week span, 4 days, 5 days,
Yeah,
turn it
couple
around
days.
and play this poor. Um, and I think that also goes to what Max said last week is that when Bruno is on and when Bruno is a different player, he is a different player and he's a difference maker. But again, not that on the pitch this week, and it's the lack of consistency. I think it's the ever growing frustration for the fans and myself included is that they can't string great performances together. It's always 1 week on, 1 week off, or 1 week on, 2 weeks off. And that's the frustrating part because we've seen the talent, we've seen the ability, we've seen the results, but why can't it be more consistent?
Yeah, of course. Just quickly touch on as well Marcus Senesi's third goal, free header inside the box. Uh, Not something that should be ever acceptable, playing at home, especially for Man U against Bournemouth. So, yeah, just to top it off, that's a poor result, especially going in, and we'll cover a little bit more about the upcoming game next. But in a game where you realistically should be winning to give yourself some momentum heading into a must-win game against Bayern Munich. Not a great look losing in this type of display. So, Matt, what were your thoughts on this game?
Hey, again, overall, for Bournemouth, they are now the form team in the Premier League. I think you have to take a look at that as a positive, Gio, for Manchester United. They've won 4 of the last 5 games, and I think in terms of the last 5 games, they have tied for the most amount of points in the Premier League. So they've been on a great run of form. They have a philosophy, they have a play style, kind of what you're going to be able to get out of this team. And I think, again, I don't mean to always harp on that. It just seems like Ten Hag doesn't have an idea of what he wants his boys to do in a possession, out of possession. They seems like if they are, whenever it gets the worst possible situation, when it seems like, and this is very much a Ole move in a way, where he's 1 game away from getting fired, they pull out a performance against like Chelsea and things all seem gravy again. But then it goes right back to what it was before. So what is the real problem here? I don't know. Again, in terms of, and I was talking about in between the break as well, where you're looking like a player like Safian Amrabat, which I don't blame him. It's not his fault that he got signed by Manchester United. He still owed money. He's on loan, and with the guarantee to buy this coming summer, it's already £21 million down the drain. Because again, he was completely cooked in regards to the first goal for Bournemouth, completely walked by. But it's not just him; it was Bruno Fernandes as well. So there are so many problems here. It's hard to kind of, where do you start? Because you brought in a player is it last year Varane came in, and now he's the backup option to Luke Shaw playing center back, because Varane's on the bench. He is healthy enough to play, but he's not playing. Why is he not playing? And you're arguably the best fullback left back in the league, and all like Luke Shaw. You're playing with center half instead, so you can sign a player and bring in Sergio Reguilon because he was cut by Tottenham for not being good enough. None of this overall makes a whole lot of sense to me. And the idea of playing an Amrabat, Scott McTominay in midfield with Bruno, if anything, you've downgraded from having a McFred in midfield. None of this collectively makes any sense to me in terms of what they want to approach. As well as, lastly, the weird part, Martial starting a striker when Højlund's healthy. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is a chronic illness that we need to talk about across the whole center of the club. You can blame Woodward. You can blame the ownership. You can blame whoever you want. Right? Oh, Woodward's gone, right? I forgot. Anyway, the point being, there's a lot of people you can blame, but it seems like everything's wrong. And to kind of magnify this, 2 points throughout the game. There was a moment when the score was, I think it was 1-0. There's a sequence of play where Diego Dalot plays it to Anthony. Anthony plays it back to Dalot. Højlund makes a great run, going across the near post, coming far to near, jumping from the defender. Diego Dalot does the typical trashy fullback thing. He's in the box in a whole position and just tries to score off near post. Hits side netting. Højlund yells at him. Manchester United never seem to threaten the net again. In a moment like that, that just simplifies, again, the selfishness of that decision, not understanding the tactical awareness, not trusting your teammates, and that seems like a problem right now. And it's tough to be able to go back through this, because then you're going for your leader, who takes a stupid yellow card so he knows he's going to miss the Liverpool game. Again, overall, there's so many problems here. It makes me upset, because I enjoy, in some ways, when Manchester United is playing well, because you love to hate them. But now it's just depressing when you have games like this, and it's just not fun to hate, because it's so depressing. There's no joy. There's no like, oh, they're close, but they barely miss it. No, there's no shot. There's no fun here for this hatred. So again, overall, very piss poor. But again, great job, Bournemouth.
Yeah, of course, Bournemouth getting the win, but let's keep on that theme. Man U, big game coming up. Not a lot of turnaround time. I think they face Bayern on Tuesday, so tomorrow, time of recording. Yeah, at home, you kind of do expect them to hopefully get a result. Bayern Munich also as well on the receiving end of a 5-1 defeat in the Bundesliga to Eintracht Frankfurt. So, not the best result going into this game. Gio, your thoughts and hopes for this Man U game tomorrow? Because, of course, if they do get a win, they need a tie from Copenhagen and Galatasaray to go through. Or do you hope they're out of Europe completely? What are your thoughts, Gio?
My thought, hey, I'm status quo on this. I've been preaching this from the very beginning. I hope they get out disgustingly. I hope it's a type of performance that really shakes the core of the fandom. Someone used the word embarrassment. I hope it's something along those lines because it's really gotten to a point where they're on the brink of embarrassment, like Max said. He's on the brink of a firing, and the manager turns it around and has a fantastic game, and everything is reconsidered. I just need Manchester to be shellacked, mollywopped, whatever the term you want to use. I need them to be sad. I need them to I need everybody on that squad to want to post a apology post to the fans of how poor they played. I just need it that bad because something needs to give, and if it's not the players, and you don't know if it's not the players, then who is it? Because if Ratcliffe is gonna come in and kind of bring in rein in a new regime, is Ten Hag the guy? Do we want to get started early? Are we hitting the panic button too early because we're still kind of in the mix in the Prem? At this rate, are we really in the mix? Like, are we even really being taken seriously at this point? I'd argue no, because teams know Manu don't really have an identity right now. They're looking for ways to exploit, which Bournemouth very much so has done so, and I think Bayern is a caliber of a team that can also do more damage. So hopefully they do, and that's it.
Right. I guess I want to be able to ask you this question, and I think might get your opinion as well. So the next 4 games for Manchester United are home to Bayern, away at Liverpool, away at West Ham, and then home to Aston Villa. Does Ten Hag make it out of those 4 games?
No.
Yeah, that's tough. It's really
No.
tough because
No.
if
No
if
shot.
they do get just magically go through to the knockout stage, there's still hope. But what really whoever makes it past to the knockout stages, I think Man U would probably be one of the worst teams in that knockout stage, and probably wouldn't look
The
at.
worst. I think you need to fix your language.
No. There's only one trash team to make it out. Don't worry. The team that City's going to face. What do you mean? We know this, right?
That's right.
I got you. I got you, boys.
That said, Liverpool away, it's what it is. And then, yeah, West Ham and Aston Villa, those are games that I think, sorry to say this, Gio, but these are the teams that you're going to be competing against for a position in hopefully the top 6, top 5, maybe top 4. So, yeah, that's really going to be what sets him apart and dictates whether he still has that job by the end of the year. Because technically, they could go through the rest of the year without having a win. What are your thoughts, Gio?
Let's just say this. Kudus is an anytime goal scorer. I would place that bet now. Get your odds in. That's a goal. Darweezy, that's an anytime goal scorer, guys. Just lock it in now. And wait, and who else are they playing? Villa?
Aston Villa?
Villa.
Oh, come on, Jamie McGinn, anytime goal scorer. Lock it in, boys. It's I just can't see it. Like, these teams that that they're gonna be up against have really shown that level of consistency. So if you're even if you argue just on paper, or just the name itself, and you kind of give Manu the odds, I personally don't see it. I don't see why you would. They haven't proven themselves to earn those odds. For anybody to be in favor of Manu. So yeah, if tomorrow doesn't go well, I am on the side of Ten Hag not making out of those games.
Okay, finally, Mac, give us your final thoughts as well to what the future could hold for Man U in the coming weeks before the end of the year.
I hope he stays. It'll be fun. Again, because for me, if he gets fired, who do they replace him with? I don't. Who? That's the question, right? You have to have an idea of, okay, there's someone else better out there. Otherwise, what's the benefit of making the change other than making a change for the sake of making a change? And now you're just further financially constrained. Let the takeover happen with the Ratcliffe. Let that play out. Let him here as a lame duck manager, and then whenever Ratcliffe is finally kind of has his idea, I hope he already has one. But unless he gets to know the club, roots in, bottom up, of how he wants to be able to make changes, at that point, then make that change. Because if you bring in someone different, we've seen thus far as Manchester United, they make consistently the wrong choices of manager. And people always say, oh, it's not just the manager. And to go back to the very beginning of the podcast, what's the difference between Aston Villa starting 11 under Steven Gerrard to Unai Emery? One player? Two players? Like, a manager makes a big difference. But Manchester United have consistently made the wrong choice. So, again, give it time, let him be lame duck, and make that change afterwards. Because if you make a change now, in all likelihood, once Ratcliffe comes in, he'll want to make another one.
Exactly. Gio, do you say no to Poch Eric Ten Hag swap midway through the season?
At this point, I take it. At this
Chelsea
point,
say no.
I would take a Gary Neville swap.
Okay, now you're trolling. Now you're trolling.
Gary Neville, Phil Neville. Flip a coin. It doesn't matter. Take it.
It's not looking great. Anyways, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @housea_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Thursday when we review the final games from the Champions League group stages, and we find out who's going through to the next round. We'll also preview some Premier League games coming up this weekend. So until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Welcome back, Ray. Feel better?
Thank you, Gio.
There is a team worse than Chelsea, and it's Manchester United.
See you guys soon.